Change isn't just coming, it's already here. This is Ask for Change podcast, hosted by leadership expert Meridith Elliott Powell. Brings you weekly conversations with leaders and experts who are redefining success in a world of disruption. Let's begin today's journey and turn uncertainty into your competitive advantage.
Let's turn uncertainty into your competitive advantage. This is Meridith Elliott Powell, host of Ask for Change. And today we are going to dive into identify, growth, and truth about high performance. We have a rock star of a guest with us today, none other than Brandon Hance. He is a serial entrepreneur and investor who's built and exited venture-backed companies. Wow. Raised millions in capital and built an impressive real estate portfolio. But what really sets him apart is his focus on identity, growth, and what it actually takes to perform at the next level. And I got to tell you, Brandon, welcome to the show. We want to know about all of that.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to be here today, and I'll share as much as I can.
Well, sounds fantastic. So in this show, we really focus on uncertainty. And when I think about focusing on uncertainty and how you succeed in uncertainty, I'm so curious where identity fits in and why it's not something that comes up. I don't hear it that often. In fact, I've only ever, in my entire career, I think I've only had one CEO who really felt the importance of identity. So talk a little bit about that.
Oh, that is a shame. We have to change that. Without question, identity is the most powerful force of the human personality. And if we know the identity that we want to embody, that becomes the anchor that is the reference point for everything in our life. And so most of the time we are drifting away from the identity. And if you don't know where to anchor, you do not know how to bring yourself back to center or in alignment. And unfortunately, if you've not gone through the process to actually create one, you can literally live your entire life in drift. And that's what most people do. And it's really unfortunate.
So is it that, I think if you ask most people what they want and what they want to achieve, everybody nobody wakes up and says, I hope I get fired from every job or I'm a loser. But is identity, as you're discussing it, is it more how I see myself and I see my success?
I think it can be. To your point on what people want, I think the first step in getting what you want out of life is knowing what you want. And I would argue that 99% of people do not know what they want. They've never taken the time to ask themselves that question, let alone answer it thoughtfully and thoroughly. So that as an aside, with respect to your question about identity, I think the identity that we should be creating is who we are at our best, right? When we look back at the highlight reel of our life, when did we perform at our best? When did we connect and feel the most alive? That is the version of us that does exist. It's not a fantasy. It's not some comic hero. We know that it already exists. The issue is that we don't step into the energy of that embodiment on a consistent basis. And so it's really kind of more remembering what that identity is, that's the best version of yourself, and then creating a persona out of that you can understand and disassociate. So it's not you in this moment, it's this thing that you kind of step into, right? So once you understand who that identity is, how they think, how they feel, and ultimately, what do they do when they're at their best, then literally every moment of your life can be in alignment with that embodiment or as a drift to that. And if you can build the practice of having self-awareness, that you can constantly catch yourself. And most people, collapse, and then they kind of bring themselves back up, and then they collapse. But the idea is to do it more like an airlines pilot that's just constantly making tiny little oscillations between where they are and where they want to be.
So, when I think about you, and I was doing the research about you, and I got to tell you, you are impressive. You're sort of like this intersection of business, identity, and performance. So I would love for you to tell the audience just your story. How did you, I don't believe you turned around and at the age of 5, you were like, I've got to have identity. I want to focus on growth. I want to buy and sell companies. Raising money will be easy. How did you get where you are?
Well, obviously it started off for me more on the performance side as an athlete. And I was fortunate to, play at USC when we won 2 back-to-back national championships. And I was coached under Pete Carroll, who I view as just a world-class leader. And he was really at the forefront of a massive cultural kind of zeitgeist shift in terms of the way that we think about performance. Prior to him, every coach I had ever played for was kind of the classic, just beat you into the ground. If it's freezing outside, you can't wear long sleeves, wake up at 5 a.m. and run so hard until you throw up. And then I transferred to USC under his leadership. And this was before he had success at USC. And so I came in and it felt soft and we weren't working that hard. Everyone was laughing and we were playing music. And I was like, we're going to get our butts kicked. And then from that point, we didn't lose a game for 3 years. I learned so much about what he was able to instill in the team was really a high performance mindset. And so that kind of began, I would say, my journey, if you will, in really trying to understand the inner work side. And what I found so much about inner work is that most of the people kind of in the industry who address those things kind of feel woo-woo. So if I'm an athlete, if I'm an entrepreneur, a hard charging high performer, it's like, that's just weak. I'm not going to want to sit cross-legged in the mountains. But what I realize is, no, the people who are the absolute best in their fields, regardless of whatever it is, typically have that final advantage. That last piece that separates them is something where they understand deeply about themselves, that they can activate that performance to take things to the next level. I kind of saw that in sports, and then I began to see that in entrepreneurship as I became a leader. And it became something that just is a real passion and almost obsession of mine to study that and hopefully help other people find that within themselves.
I think what you're saying is so powerful. And I want to dive next into, how do we go down this avenue of getting that mindset. But we're recording this just about the time we're coming up to the Masters golf tournament. And I love to play golf. I'm a big golfer. And I'm always amazed. Like, you watch the first couple of days and somebody comes out of nowhere to take the lead. A lot in the Masters tournament. Happens in a lot. I see it in tennis tournaments, things like that too. And then on the last day of the Masters is the crack. Is the person who had the lead, but the pressure is just too much. I remember watching the Tour de France and you think, okay, this person's going to get it. And the last day, everything changes. So talk about, and I do think you're right. It's that, your athleticism, how much shape you're in, your nutrition, everything got you to a level, but that level that separates those from others is what's in that mindset. So for an entrepreneur listening to this, who's got a big dream, but they're sitting there going, oh my God, I mean, the pressures of what's going on in the economy, right now, I can't find the help I need to help. Where do they go to dig in and start to gain that mindset?
Well, I would say there's kind of 4 shifts that I think each of us by default, the knob is twisted all the way in the wrong direction. And every single moment of every single day, we have to do our best to kind of twist them in the right direction that allows us not only to perform at our highest level, but ideally to do that in a way that is sustainable and fulfilling, right? Just from a personal well-being standpoint. The first one is fear. I think we are scared of everything, just absolutely fraught with fear. And so the more that you can shift that fear to love, the more expansive you become, the more opportunities, the more resourceful that you are. And so if you think about that golfer, they are absolutely terrified of the crack. What if I do this again? Right. All of the fear that comes from that, as opposed to just saying like, wow, like beautiful day. What an opportunity. I've dreamt of this since I was a kid. Right. So all of the love that comes from that. The next one, which is related to fear, because most of the fear comes in thinking about any other moment besides the one that you're in, right? So instead of from projection to presence. So you're typically, using your imagination to go think about the past or think about the future. Both of those are a immediate degradation to performance, right? Like especially the nuance of golf, where literally just the shift of a shaft by a millimeter is the difference between you winning or losing the Masters. And so that shift from projection to presence, just to be here, grounded in this moment. And then the next one is around self-centeredness. It's all about me in this moment. Oh my God, everyone in the world is watching me on television. It just creates anxiety as opposed to some degree of selflessness, right? Like if you're on, let's say it's a team sport, you're there, it's like with my team and my staff and my city. And like, we're here connected. I'm doing something in service of other people. those are the moments that you see, like the Kirk Gibson home run, like the infamous.
Yeah.
That wasn't about him in that moment. He was fully in love with the game. He was fully present in the moment, and he was fully selfless in his role on that team on behalf of that city for the love of all baseball fans around the world. And that's why you could feel the significance of that. And if you juxtapose that with somebody up there like, oh my God, what if I'm do that? Yeah. Think about the time that I did it as a kid that my dad yelled at me. What if I do this in the future and all the fans hate me or I get fired? Oh my God, it's me. That's the opposite of what you want to do. And it's a recipe for cracking, as you put it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. I mean, those are really simple to understand, probably not as easy to practice. But I love that you started with fear, because of the neuroscience around fear has been really interesting in the sense that when you are in fear, you literally move from the side of your brain that shuts down your ability to innovate, your ability to create the very skills you need to get through whatever challenge is in front of you. And so, moving that to being absolutely present and to being selfless. When I was a kid, my mother used to say, the fastest way to get past your own problems is to focus on somebody else's. And it's just, it's so true. Yeah.
And by the way, fear and faith are really two sides of the same coin. Both of them are just a prediction of the future. And one of them is like, I'm afraid I'm going to do something wrong, not be enough, not be loved, whatever it may be. And the other is faith that it will all work out, right? Faith that that everything's going to be okay. And so it really is just a choice. And to your previous point, totally get easier said than done. Yeah. It is a practice. But first, people need to just understand it. And then there has to be a deliberate practice. Like so many of these things, so if you think about physical, you want to be physically stronger. Of course, you also want to be mentally and emotionally and spiritually stronger, but we don't take the same approach in that way as we do physically. So there's all types of things that you can do from an actual ongoing intentional practice standpoint that increase your capacity to do this, that you can actually show up, in your best self in a more consistent way.
Do you feel that this is accessible to anyone? I was watching a podcast with Novak Djokovic, and he was really talking about the inner work that he did for he had to let go of the anger that he felt, from a child, from living in a country that was constantly bombed and what had happened to his family. And it was the breakthrough for him to go in and do that inner work. Do you think this is something that is accessible to anyone who chooses to go down that path?
Short answer is hell yes. And absolutely, it's a must. Yeah. Second thing that I'll say is that it's so crazy to me that like self-help has a negative connotation. Like the fact that it's taboo and looked down upon, that you would want to help yourself, is insane. And I give tremendous props to people like, Djokovic, who are out there in the public explaining that it is through this work that he became the champion that everybody reveres. And for whatever reason, we want to tell ourselves the story that he's just born that way and we aren't, and he's great and I'm not, and all these terrible narratives. But he's outwardly vulnerable, explaining what he had to endure and how he turned those through inner work into his competitive advantage. There's no question about it that he would attribute his success to inner work. And so I think that's happening more and more and more. You're seeing people who are really able to not just achieve success, but to sustain success. And almost universally, if they're willing to open up and be honest about it, they're pretty consistently saying, it's this next level. That, it's like when my grandfather grew up and he was playing football during Hell Week in the middle of the summer, sweltering heat, there was one bucket of water that had a bunch of washcloths in it. Yeah. If you were tired or hot, you would run over there, you could put it in your mouth, and that was it. Anything beyond that, you were soft. Fast forward to today, it's like obviously everybody's hydrate early and often, and everyone's very concerned about that. His generation didn't lift weights, right? So they didn't even friggin' drink water. my dad's generation didn't even lift weights, right? Yeah. So think about each frontier of human performance, about where we've gone from generation to generation. I have no doubt in my mind that the next frontier of human performance will be unlocked through inner work.
I would agree with that. I mean, and I think it is a lot of the athletes that are the GOATs that are kind of leading the way, because they've reached GOAT potential, that they're coming out, they're being vulnerable, and then they're investing in really trying to help help other athletes and general people break through. So let me ask you this. I mean, so you had this, life as an athlete, and you learn about this growth mindset, and it sounds like the culture on that team remained very different from any culture on a team that you had been around. Help me understand that a little bit as it relates to business. I mean, here I am, we're in the middle of an uncertain marketplace. First quarter maybe hasn't been good. I'm scared to death. I've got to go do a speaking engagement this week. And I was talking with the CEO and I said, what is the message you want me to get across? And he said, this is going to sound ridiculous. He said, but oh my God, we need to scale. And I just need people to be kind to each other. Why aren't we kind to our employees? We're pushing them so hard, but we're not kind to them. And I thought it was really an interesting position. He said, I just think we'll have a better culture if we're kind. He said, I don't mean not to hold them accountable. So I want you to talk a little bit about the juxtaposition of those cultures and then how you took that into the business world.
Yeah. Oh, so much to talk about. I don't even know where to start. So first off, I think that it is one of the things that comes up first for me is you have to provide people the context for greatness. Okay. So if you use the sports analogy, which is overplayed, every single person on the team, in the stands, or watching around the world knows the goals and objectives of each team.
Right.
Every single step of the way, you know how much time is left in the game, how many points each team has, so on and so forth. Duh, right? Obviously, each member of that team and coaching staff would operate in fundamentally different ways based on what's on the scoreboard, right?
Yeah.
In business, it is kind of becoming here and there popular for transparency, or at least the word of transparency. But I would say overwhelmingly, the majority of people on the team don't know what the objective is, how much time is left in the game, or what the points are. We just don't know that. Nor do we know how our role kind of rolls up to the broader objective. So I think that is just absolute table stakes, that given how fast things move today, if you don't have everybody with the context for greatness, how could you possibly get the most value from them? I think that's just first and foremost, they need to know that. I'd say secondly, the company's goals and vision has to be big enough to fit everybody in its goals and visions, and they have to align with one another. I think we're just kind of beyond this industrial approach where you're a cog in the wheel and your job is to make it part and do it over and over and over again. Even the knowledge economy, right, is like, right? So even that right now is at risk. So what we're seeing broadly is we're looking for creativity. We're looking for empathy. We're looking for problem solving.
Yes.
We're looking for all of these soft skills that frankly AI can't do and won't be able to do for a very long time, or maybe ever. And so in order for you to get that value from your team, you have to provide them with transparency. You have to align their goals. You have to communicate in a way that is inclusive, like we're all on the same team. And I think that just doesn't exist, particularly in larger, corporations where there's just 7 layers of pay grades, and the directors don't talk to the managers don't talk, and so forth. It just doesn't work, and it won't work. I think teams need to move faster and faster, and speed is directly correlated to alignment and transparency.
Talk a little bit more about that. I mean, I guess, like, how does speed correlate to transparency and a shared vision?
Well, think about it. I mean, if we don't know where we're going, right, how the hell are we going to possibly get there?
Right.
As a big group, right? So if it's just me, I know exactly where I'm going. I don't need to take the time to slow down and communicate with another person. But if there's 5 of us, okay, it's relatively straightforward to get on the same page with the 5 of us. We know the common objective. We can figure out how to divide and conquer amongst the group. But when that 5 becomes 100 or 500, and now I told the 5, but then the 5 may have told 1 or 2 of their subordinates, but then all of the people beneath them, which is where the majority of the headcount exists, don't know. They may be moving to the left. We may be moving straight ahead. This group may be moving to the right. And not only does that slow you down, it may actually pull you back. Right? You have to be moving forward in a unified front. And that's more important now than ever before, because the pace of innovation is off the charts.
I guess in that kind of environment, though, you as a leader have to be comfortable with, or have to create an environment where there's room for failure and there's room for mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. If you're not, And we should be celebrating those, right?
Right.
We should be understanding what is our thesis, right? How do we, I mean, everything should be basically on the scientific framework. We have a theory, we're going to test the heck out of it, and we're going to iterate over and over and over again. You have to build a culture around learning and growth. And learning and growth, core to that process, is embracing and frankly accelerating mistakes.
I love that. I think that we've got a methodology we use in our business called test fast. And the idea is that you throw an idea out there, you test it, you quickly see what worked with it, what didn't work with it, let go of what didn't, and move on. And I love the fact that you said celebrate it, because I think you have to create an environment where people feel safety to come up with quote unquote crazy ideas or try something different or make a decision in a moment. I just had a situation about a week ago where I was trying to get to Bangkok for a speaking engagement. My flight was canceled, and everybody in Bangkok was asleep. So I had to call the meeting planner in New York, who was not responsible for this meeting. She's just somebody I knew that worked there. And I was so impressed that on a Saturday she answered the phone, but even more impressed that she just said, I don't know if you can do this or not, because I was going to be a day late. She said, just do it, just go, we'll figure it out later. And I thought, that is a company that is run well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's something there about just, walk the staircase as it builds beneath your feet. And I think you just have to have some degree of certainty and trust in the process that it will work out. And that is impossible to do if you don't feel that you're supported or that you're operating on a team that believes in that, right? And is really working hard to instill that type of value system.
Yeah. And I think it's important as a leader to understand you can't get there if you don't have a team that is taking chances, taking a risk, moving a little outside of the box now and then, coming up to you and telling you that things aren't working. You don't stand a prayer in today's marketplace, because we are so far past your ability to do it on your own. Listen, I just have 3 more questions for you, 2 more that we always end the podcast with, but I don't want to finish this without asking you about the fact that your work, you now focus on measuring meaning and alignment. And you really think that's going to be the competitive advantage for businesses and leaders. Can you talk a little bit about why that will be the competitive advantage?
Yeah, listen, I think that, again, in a time of rapid innovation, well, let me back up and actually incorporate this with the identity concept that we discussed at the beginning of the podcast, which is most people's identity is what they do, not who they are or how they experience their life, right? And so if your entire identity is solely based on what you do professionally, you are on very unstable ground, right? You have to expand that identity to where your professional room of your house is a very important room that you spend a lot of time in, but you have other rooms in the house that you occupy. I think that's really, really an important piece, because we're going to go through, and we are going through, such rapid transformation that what you do today is very likely to look very different tomorrow or a year from now or 3 years from now, right? So I think part of this is saying, okay, well, how can I make sure that I'm taking a more expansive view of my life? That, of course, the central column in that may be my profession, but ultimately, how do I create a relationship with that is multidimensional, right? This is not just the one piece, but there's so many other aspects of that. And then ultimately, in order for me to engage in that company the way that we're talking about, has to be meaningful. Because if it isn't meaningful, you're not going to be willing to be vulnerable, to take risks, to work in an ambiguous environment, to communicate to other people in the organization with compassion, but also candor about where they made mistakes or where we can get better, right? If it isn't meaningful enough to you, if it doesn't matter enough, you're just going to push yourself back away from the desk and say, shrug your shoulders, I'll let somebody else deal with this. But if it means something to you, you'll have the courage to take the steps that are necessary to not only advance your career, but ideally advance the company.
We always end this podcast with 2 questions, and you can answer them in either order. How do people find out about you? How do they find out about your work? How do they follow what you're doing? And then what is your greatest piece of advice for entrepreneurs, individuals out there struggling to turn uncertainty to competitive advantage?
Well, I would say that up until about 6 months ago, there was no answer to your first question. posting on LinkedIn about 6 months ago. I've been doing it every day and really having a lot of fun with that.
Nice.
So that's probably the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. Second question, in terms of what's best, I would say, I think resilience is a topic that you speak about often, and people take a very different, view and definition of that. Mine is the rate of return back to the center. And I think that performance culture is so often focused on raising the ceiling, where if you look at actual performance, it is rarely the case that you don't have the ability to perform at the level that you need to, and more often the case that you just don't do it consistently. So far more important than raising the ceiling is actually raising the floor, right? Finding that consistency. So when I think about where does that performance typically drop off, it usually is an issue around resilience, right? They drift, they get out of alignment, they step into fear, whatever, the various things that we've talked about that don't allow them to perform at their best. I think resilience to me is the most powerful tool to develop and a practice to develop. They're realizing, I'm falling out of alignment. Boop. How do I step back in? So literally looking at it as a rate of return back to your center or the best version of yourself, to me is the greatest thing that somebody could focus on to improve their performance.
I think that's such amazing advice, because if you spend any time reading history, whether it be about, literal historic war figures or people who have just achieved great things, they've gone through really dark hours, really, a year here and there where nothing positive happened for them, or they just got rejected like crazy. And it's really your ability to get through that, to come through it, to learn from it, to go again, and to take it as another opportunity to move forward that's going to separate you from everybody else. And I'm not sure you can achieve greatness without the failure side of it.
No chance.
Yeah. Brandon, I cannot thank you enough. You have been an amazing guest. This is a fantastic episode. Thank you so much for helping all of our listeners once again learn what they need to know to ask for change and turn all of this uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. I'll see y'all next week.